Hi, I've settled back into my Bristol home now, not at my mum's anymore. I'm starting uni again on Monday, which is really exciting, so yeah, I'm back here until Christmas now. I thought I'd make a little video for you today just to kind of talk about a few of my experiences of interrailing and answering a few kind of common questions that I had when I got back. So I've got my laptop here, I made a few notes of things that I kind of wanted to cover, so let's begin. So the first thing is the type of ticket that I had. Now Interrail have loads of different options for tickets, but I had a continuous 30-day one and a continuous 15-day one, which basically meant that I had 45 days to get on any trains that I liked. I could get on 5 a day, 2 a day, every day, like as many, no limits, which was really cool. For me, this was the perfect one because although they're the most expensive tickets, I wanted the flexibility and I didn't want to kind of have to know which city I was going to be in at a particular time. I wanted to just play it by ear, and if I really liked a city I could stay there longer, and if I didn't like it so much I could kind of move on, and I didn't want to have the limit of travel days. So the other option of ticket that Interrail offer is kind of, they do a few various different numbers of days and travel, but there'll be like 10 travel days within 22 days. So you can have a 22-day trip, but you can only travel on 10 of those days. But because I wanted the flexibility, it was better for me to have a continuous pass where I could just jump on and off as I pleased. The next thing is accommodation. So I really was not planning ahead at all. I knew I was starting in Paris, so when I booked my flight to Paris, I booked my first 3 nights accommodation. Other than that, I was kind of booking it the day before I'd arrive in a city, or on the train on the way there even. And that sounds really risky, but there's so many options of places to stay. There's so many websites that you can book through. There was not one night that I was like, oh, I'm homeless. Like, I could have booked it 5 minutes before and I would always find somewhere to stay. The websites I was using to book my accommodation were Hostelworld and Airbnb. I'd recommend both of them so much. I had a budget of about £20 a night. I only went over it a couple of times when I was like getting stressed and I wanted to treat myself to a bit of a nicer place. But other than that, yeah, I was staying definitely under £20 a night. So Hostelworld, I was booking like mixed dorms. I'd have like maybe 16 or 8 or 4 people in a dorm, and those were the cheapest options. Basically it would just be bunk beds with a shared bedroom, and yeah, quite basic but kind of all I needed. And then Airbnb is basically when someone has a spare room in their house and they rent it out for like 1 or 2 nights or however many nights you want. Airbnb was amazing. I stayed with some really lovely people and stayed in some houses that were absolutely beautiful. I really enjoyed staying in Airbnbs, but sometimes it was a bit more difficult arranging to kind of get the key or meet the person because I had like limited Wi-Fi. So Hostelworld was easier in that sense because once I book it I would just rock up at the hostel because I would have the address. Whereas with Airbnb, even though you have the address, you need to work out which buzzer to press and where the person's going to be, and you have to arrange with them. So you kind of need a bit more organisation for Airbnb. But I stayed probably about equal in both of those, Airbnb and Hostelworld. Something I did notice about the hostels though was that there were so many boys. I barely met any girls. I would say like 75% of the rooms I was staying in were boys only, even though I'd booked like a mixed dorm. One of my friends told me that I would be meeting loads of friends if I was staying in like a hostel every couple of nights, and I was really excited for that, kind of to meet fellow travellers and interrailers. But actually it didn't really work out like that because everyone's kind of making the most of their days. The only time you get to chat is really in the evenings, by which time you're kind of tired and want to go to bed. So actually I didn't really meet many friends at all, which is kind of sad. In Budapest I did get along really well with my roommates, and we all spent about 3 days together. So that was the only place that we actually did spend kind of quality time with my roommates. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was the actual trains. Now I assumed that I would be able to jump on and off any train without any reservation, but turns out that the train lines around Europe actually allocate a certain percentage of their seats to Interrail, and once those are full you're not getting on that train. So I didn't actually reserve any trains ahead of my trip. Most of the time it was okay because I could get one a couple of hours later, or maybe like in the evening of that day or something, but a couple of times it was a big problem for me, such as when I'd already booked my accommodation in my next city and then turned out that I couldn't get on that train, so I'd kind of wasted that night's accommodation money. And then also when I was trying to leave Barcelona to go to France, I couldn't get on a train for 3 days, which was awful. So a couple of times I did have to jump on mega buses, and I did actually take a couple of flights as well because I had to be somewhere by a certain day, like Barcelona to meet my sister, or coming back to the UK I had to fly as well because my ticket was going to run out before I could actually get a space on a train. So I would recommend that if you're going interrailing that I would book maybe the biggest journeys that you're going on ahead of time, just to kind of guarantee that you're going to get on it on the day you want to get on it. Because my trip was quite flexible, it wasn't a massive problem. I mean, it was a bit annoying that I thought I'd be leaving one day but I'd have to stay another night and I'd have to sort out my accommodation again. But actually like, as long as you're flexible, it doesn't really matter. But if you kind of have a plan that you want to stick to, then I kind of would recommend booking ahead the big journeys. Maybe from when you're crossing borders, those are the longest ones, I think. Next up is baggage. Now, I took a huge rucksack with me that I would tighten around my waist so that my hips took all the weight because it was so heavy. And actually, I'm really paying for it now. My lower back is killing me. I might actually go for a massage and sort it out this week because it's really, really painful. But a lot of people that I did see also travelling had little suitcases, and I did consider bringing a suitcase, but my mum was like, no, you're a traveller, you need a rucksack. But actually, I would say if I were to do it again, I would take a suitcase. I think walking somewhere with something strapped to your back is no different than, well, is harder than walking somewhere just dragging a suitcase along behind you. I can't think of any of the times that it would have been easier for me to have a backpack than a suitcase. So yeah, I would say if I were to do it again, I would take a little suitcase instead of a backpack. It got to the point where my backpack was so stuffed that everything in it would have a particular place. It was like playing Tetris. Every time I'd pack my bag, I'd be having to play Tetris to get it all in. Suitcases are the way forward. So last but not least is the actual cities. Now, my favourite city that I visited was Prague, and it's weird because at the time I didn't realise it, but since I've been back I keep finding myself saying, oh, and when I was in Prague I did this, and when I was in Prague I ate that, and when I was in Prague blah blah blah, and I just keep finding myself saying that over and over again when I'm telling all stories to my friends and family about my trip. I really, really loved it, and I think there was so much to do, and I was there for quite a bit of a longer time than the rest of the cities. I think I was there for 5 days. So maybe it was just because I spent more time there and I got to know it a bit more. But yeah, I really, 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 really loved Prague. I also really, really enjoyed Bruges. I think it was just such a perfect little fairy tale town city. In fact, I kind of couldn't imagine myself living there as an old lady. It's just such a pretty city with all the horses trotting around and the river and the castle. And yeah, just really picturesque, and I mentioned it as I was there, but it reminded me of Far, Far Away in the Shrek films. Yeah, really enjoyed Bruges. I was debating whether or not to discuss my least favourite cities because I didn't want to like offend anybody if they were from there or anything, but I thought I would kind of mention them and then explain why, because it's not just because I didn't like the cities, there were reasons. So the two at the bottom of my list would have to be Rotterdam and Antwerp. Antwerp, I was only there for half a day, so you could say that maybe it was because I didn't spend enough time there that I didn't like it. Train station was beautiful, so when I first arrived I was like, oh, wow, this place is great. However, I would say like 90% of my time there was spent walking to places through like shopping streets and high streets. I kind of went to see the architecture and the culture of each city, and I think walking down a shopping street just the same as home, I wasn't really getting that from it. And then the second place is Rotterdam. The day I arrived there was a street party going on and my hostel was so cool and I was really, really excited to be there. It had such a buzzy vibe going on. However, after that first initial night, the street party had stopped, the rain came in, and it just made the rest of my trip, I wouldn't say miserable, but I wasn't as excited and as enthusiastic to go out and explore. I don't really like rain very much. I didn't want to kind of go walking in the rain. There weren't so many people around. And I'd say probably actually the weather was the reason I didn't like Rotterdam as much. I could go on and on and on about the other cities that I visited. I feel so lucky to have got the opportunity to go. The family that funded my trip have allowed me to visit 8 new countries in one summer, which I think is just incredible. So a massive thank you to them. If you're planning on going interrailing around Europe and you have any questions, please feel free to comment below with them and I'll do my best to answer them. And that's about it. If there was any other particular cities you'd like me to talk about or make another video about, I'd be happy to do so. Just leave a comment below and give this vlog a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for another video. Bye!